Welcome to Engineering Scale Models. I'm Jason, your host, and I do models. I need to do some soldering for the traffic light program that we're building for a traffic light system, and I just want to go over some basic soldering tips. So, I'm going to do some basic soldering with a DIY electronic kit from Amazon. It's a little game system I'm going to build and give to my son. I'm using a TS100 iron. Mine looks a little different. It's a different color, but that's the picture of it there. Let us go to the overhead. And there's my soldering iron right there. It's 12 to 24 volts, 17 to 65 volts. I believe I'm using an 18 volt power supply or 19 volt power supply. So it heats up rather quickly and works rather well. I have it in a holder. This is the only holder I seem to find that can hold the little Brillo pad brass thing to clean the soldering iron, and this also doesn't allow it to go all the way through like some other holders. So let's take a look at the kit. Oh, my user manual, that's weird. Oh, also I have my Koto fume extractor, so you may hear that run in the background. Hopefully that's not too loud, or that is incredibly loud, and hopefully it doesn't. But you gotta have a fume extractor, especially when I'm soldering out here with my son that he's doing his school. So, how to make a good solder drill. This teaches you how to solder. Solder sequence from low to high. We already know that. I will explain that, and then an introduction to your customer. So, not very much in that book. But we have a grab bag full of goodies. And I am using a silicone mat. This one's from Amazon Basics. I like the design of it. So we have a battery module here. And then we have the bag will not defeat me. It has not defeated me yet. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got here. We have the acrylic case. I like to get these kits for acrylic cases, and then some of the kits that I built, like I have a clock I'm working on here that I'm giving. This one's for my son, but I'm going to build another one for a Christmas gift. I got a calculator kit that is crappy. It doesn't work, so that will not be a Christmas gift unless I give it to somebody I don't care about. So here is the circuit board. It is a nice thick double-sided circuit board. I believe it's double-sided. So nice little nice screen print on it. It's called an MCU Palm game. Why is the black, red, and ground hole so huge? I guess you're feeding them up and going across. But that makes sense. And then we have our two LED matrix screens. We have our scoreboard here, a triple 7-segment display. And then we have our chip here, where you can actually read that. So this is an STC. Try to find a data sheet on this, and it's all in Chinese and many pages long. I'm not liking what I see here. Yeah, this is not good. I'm gonna have to do some work on this. You can see all those pins are bent. So, and these chips already have a hard time going in these sockets. I like turn pin sockets. So, yeah, so I'm gonna have to work on those very gently so I don't break any off. So, I'm not happy about that. Let's see what we have in the bag of components. It looks all, most of the time when you get these with these STC controllers, there's not a lot of components that go with it. We have a USB mini lead. I'm assuming this is for power. We have a USB mini port. Using all 5 pins. Where is that plugging into? It does plug in nice. A little bit of play, but it should be good. Okay, we have a sound buzzer. Looks like a passive buzzer or active. I can never remember which one's passive, which one's active. Latching switch. Looks like 4, 5, 6 push buttons. Some screws for mounting and a capacitor. No resistors. No. Not quite sure. Oh, this is for that button. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 components, and then you have the 7 switches to solder on, and of course the battery pack here. So I'll probably do the switches first. The capacitor's not that bad to do. The switches, the buzzer. So a lot of times it's easier to do that socket first. Might do that socket. Normally you would go from lowest component to highest component, so you could then flip it over, but I'll show you what I'll use in a minute. So I really don't need to. I'm just trying to look. A lot of times, if there's not a lot of space in between these pins and something else you're soldering, when you're soldering this down here, you may get some solder in these holes of these pins, so your socket sometimes can be hard to get in. So I might put that socket in first. Let's take a look at the socket and see if any of those pins are bent. That all looks good. Let's see how that fits in here. Yeah, that seems all nice. I might put that in first. So alright. So let's talk about solder. I have a couple different types of solder. I have this solder here. This is well, let's find out what this is. I won't be using this, but let's find out what it is. This is 0.85 millimeter. So 0.85 millimeter. And what I use most of the time for soldering, small joints like this, is 0.6. 0.6 millimeter solder. I like it. I buy it in big rolls. I'll show you the roll here. This is my roll of 0.6. It is massive. This is like 5 pounds of solder. Came out of my little dispenser. So I have so I use it on these rolls, and I just pulled this one off of the roll, so I will go ahead and cut it off and roll it up, and then I cut a piece off and I roll it up like this, and then I can hold it, and then when I'm done using it, I hang it up on my bench. So I have this little piece here, and then I will need another piece of my thin stuff. The only problem with this stuff does go quick. You go through this stuff like super quick because it's so thin, but I like it. I think it leaves a better solder joint. It gets more of the flux. Now this is flux core, and I'm sorry about that. This is flux core solder, and it is it's pretty good. It's let me see what the ratio is here on it. This happens to be, it's 1 pound, not 5 pounds, I'm sorry. It is, well, it says 0.5 millimeter is what it supposedly says. 2.2% flux. Now there's the part number, SN6330SB. 73, so it's 6337, so tin lead, so that's what it is, 63. So I like it. It works pretty good. I also have some other stuff. I have some even finer stuff that's insane for surface mount and things like that. I like having different solder. I buy it in the 1 pound, and I've never bought solder. I've had that solder for years, and it's the spool that keeps on giving. If you're gonna solder, I recommend having some D-braid, some soldering braid to desolder things if you make a mistake. And then I use some flux. I use this Chip Quick. It's not cheap, but it works good. If you need some extra flux, it comes in this. Some people say it has a shelf life, but I don't know. It does have a shelf life, but you know, for basic hobby electronics, I wouldn't highly worry about that shelf life too much. You can also get flux in a paste form, dirt cheap, $2 or $3. This stuff's nasty. I use this to clean my soldering iron. This is how it came. I haven't used much of this yet. This big old container, and there's hardly any in it, and it makes me wonder if there's 4 ounces in here. But you know, you get what you pay for. I guess it was cheap. So I am going to go over soldering this here. I'm not going to solder the whole. I'm going to solder the whole thing on camera, but I am going to not be talking during it because it's getting close to my son's school time. So I'm going to start off here, and then we're going to go to basically like a montage. So let me get this all organized here out of the way. All the screws and whatnot on this little gear. So we got our parts there, our finishing parts over here, got our power lead, and we have our solder, and we have our chips right there. Okay, so I am going to use a very cheap, very crappy, let me see if I can go out here. Yeah, very cheap, very crappy soldering frame. This is garbage. I don't care for this, but it works, and it was cheap. So I'm gonna put my board in here, squeeze it a little bit, not too much, because this thing is a super pain in the butt to do. You have to like really reach around and make sure everything's tight, and then not too tight that it bends your board or bends this thing here. And then if you tighten it too much to keep it from flexing, it gets super hard to spin back and forth. So but you want to get the flex out of it, so I don't know. So I'm going to plug in my soldering iron. It is done here like this. I'm going to turn it on. It does have a menu setting. I haven't messed with the menu since I got it. Watch it. It heats up pretty quick. It's about 350 is what I'm going to solder at. This may go higher. Yeah, this is set. I'm going to set it back. I'm going to do 370, 360. Okay, so it's going to go to 360, and boom, it's already hot. I'm going to put a pair of Xeron cutters. I almost forgot about that. I'm going to put a little bit of solder on my soldering tip there. Turn on my fume extraction, and I'm going to put this chip in here like this. Move it there. And then I'm going to zoom in here. So I'm going to hold this chip down from underneath, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to touch the pad and the pin of the chip like so. Heat them up and introduce the solder. Now I'm just tacking this together. I'm tacking that corner, making sure that's sitting down, and then I'm going to tack this corner right here. Corner down. Then I'm going to check and make sure that it is sitting flat on both sides. That looks good. looks good. And now I'm going to attack the other two corners. Should I get enough solder? This is why a lot of people don't like to use this thin solder because it takes a little bit more. But especially on these through-hole circuit boards. And then I'm going to touch up the two first ones I did. Add a little bit more solder. And that just tacked it in place. Clean my soldering iron. Use up the last bit of that solder. Have my new stick here. These pads are huge. I am going to go with the thicker solder. This is just, yeah, these pads are huge. I was soldering another one of these kits and the pads weren't as big and the thinner stuff worked better. Make sure you're cleaning your tip off. You want to use the sponge. If you use the sponge, make sure you wait for your iron to get back up the temperature. That's one of the reasons I like using the brass willowy thing. Now see, I don't know if they say flux can go bad if you buy it in like the tubes and stuff. I don't know if it can go bad in solder, and I've had this solder for a few years, and I don't know, because this particular size that I'm using right now doesn't want to flow as well as my other sizes, especially my thinner stuff. And it makes me wonder if the flux isn't as good. So, almost done with this side here. Side. Yeah, there's no hurry on soldering. Just take your time, get a good joint. You want it to look nice and pretty, but you don't want to rush it. You don't want to take forever either. You don't want to linger too long, especially with parts with plastic on it, because you can melt the plastic. And that's what's good with, and also on IC chips, that's why it's good to have sockets. So let's check this here. Turn that off for a second. And we'll check that. Oh, that looks good, if you can see that there. How that all looks. Now, looking like the size of these standoffs that I have to take the board off the bottom, I don't have to clip these, so I'm not gonna, put wear on my clippers just to clip those down. So next thing we're gonna do is I'll probably do, yeah, the gap. This is this switch here, I bet. This is the gap. I wonder if they mean this is the gap. They say, see, it says gap this way. I wonder if that's what they mean by the gap. Because it'll go either way around. I mean, if it is backwards, it just means it will, when you turn it on, it'll turn off, and when you turn it off, it'll turn on. So, and it's not that much big of a deal to desolder it. I might put that on last. So let's do this speaker over here. So this has a plus and minus here, and then there's a plus and minus in there. You can barely see it. There it is. Plus and minus, so plus to plus. Turn on the fume extraction. Contort my hand here. Hold on to the solder and the component. That's what's nice about this board rack. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder one side here. I don't like that solder joint, so I'm going to make sure that's sitting flat, and I'm going to do this one here. So that pin doesn't want to take heat. See, that one looks a little bit better. It doesn't look great. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. You see how it's hard to see, but if you look how this is kind of more mounded there, and this one is more, see, these are all sitting like flat to the pad and, mountainous. This one is more hillish. I don't like that at all, but I think it's a good connection. It seems like the pin didn't get hot enough and the solder didn't flow down, but we'll have to troubleshoot. If it doesn't work, it's a bad connection. So let's do one of these buttons over here. We'll just stay in this area of the board here, and we'll put the button in. Turn on fuel extraction. Have a thicker solder. Do one corner of this. I'm actually going to turn my soldering iron up for this, because these are bigger pads. So I'm just going to let that get up to temp. So right about there. The joint hot and fill the joint up. Let that solidify. Over here, make sure we're sitting good and square. sits good there. Do this one. And they look better. And that button's nice and flat. Clickies. So let's do this one over here. And then we'll do that USB port, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Having thin solder, but now looking at it, 3 pins of that USB port aren't connected. So let me do this corner up here real quick. Oh, see, I let go of the button before the solder solidified. Make sure that's still sitting good. Yep, it is. And it wasn't getting hot or anything. It was just, I thought it was set and it wasn't. May have the iron a wee bit too hot. Okay, so that is that. From here, I am going to film the next part. I am going to pause here. We have the 2 buttons, and I'll be back in the next part of this video. Okay, I'm back. I sped up that footage. Hopefully that worked in OSB, or it's just gonna be no sound soldering. I finished this up. I put it together. It's got the battery pack. I had to leave these wires long because of the way it comes apart, and in case I needed to check anything or whatnot, I could take it all apart and get to it, and they are soldered there. You can power it from a power bank, but the power bank I planned on using, which was this one, this doesn't draw enough power to keep this running, so I have to find a power bank that will always stay on, and that's hard to find. So it's basically, you turn it on and you have Tetris, snake follow game, I believe this is a car racing game, this is Space Invaders type, this is slot machine, I think this is settings, sound settings, and then you can go back through the menu and you see for Tetris the high score is 13, 28 for Snake, 245 for car racing, and 666 for Space Invaders. And these are all got by my son. I have yet to get a high score. So, yeah, I'm old. So, that's this. You can see the solder joints in there. It's a nice basic fun kit, you know, gives you a nice retro game to play. And you can learn to solder, practice your soldering. Not a lot can mess up. You really can't mess up the chip because it's going in the socket. A little tricky to get in the socket, but you know, as long as you take your time, it works out pretty well. Make sure everything's straight and lines up so it fits to the case. And it's a good little kit. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. You can visit me first up, test equipment on the bench is that. You can visit me at these social media websites or on Patreon, help support the channel. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day.